Mino Lion Media presents Business First.
Hi, all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Aline. I am your host, and today we have an interesting creative talent who's going to talk about his journey and offer some advice to you all who are still trying to figure out how to monetize your creative gifts. Please welcome to the studio, Guy Routte See. Guy, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here. I know you have a hectic schedule. There's a lot going on. You started a company in the pandemic called Schematics LLC. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was, and thank you for having me, but I had a company called War Media, which was a record label and a management company, and that I was a partnership with an artist named Pharaoh Monch, MC. And I did that for about 10, 11 years. What I realized in the process of that is that I wasn't fully experiencing my own creative energy. You know, I was so busy managing his and other artists that we were associated with that I wasn't getting a chance to, see the ideas that I had come to fruition. And so, end of 2019, I made a decision that I needed to start something new. And he was fully understanding. I said, I want to retain you as a client. But I need to, have freedom to do these creative ideas that are in my head and what I wanted to do when we started War Media, which is why we call the media and not, War Records. I wanted to, do these ventures into film and in the art space and those other things and wanted to be a little bit more of a free agent in that way. So, I started thinking about it, and 2020 came and pandemic hit, and I said, okay, I have to really push forward. And I started what would become Schematics LLC, Schematics Industries, which was kind of an individual company to get my ideas out. And at the same time, some friends of mine were doing things in the tech space, and they asked me to come in and consult on some deals. And it was really, really, mind blowing. And after we closed a couple of deals, they asked me if I would come on and kind of be the CEO of their venture. And I was like, no, I don't want to be in any more partnerships. I want to, and I'm not a tech guy anyway. And my guy sat me down and he said, listen, any media company that you're going to be part of, if you look at Apple or you look at Netflix or you look at Amazon, they all are tech companies as well. This is the era we're in. You're going to need a tech component to what you're doing. And so it made a lot of sense. We figured out a structure that would work. And so we merged our companies. He had a company, Mark Hines and Eddie Gadgetar. They had a company called Mass Consortium. I had Schematics Industries. So we created Schematics LLC for the media side and Mass Consortium for the art side. And we've been rolling ever since, and it's been going well.
Wow. Tell me what happened in 2019, because I'm sure you spoke to a lot of people when you said, you had been, even though you had been enjoying what you were doing, you were managing a lot of people's careers, you were, you were making sure that they were reaching their full creative potential, but you had these things inside of you that you wanted to give birth to. Like, what was it? Like 2019 is when you made the decision, but what was it? Like, what was that final straw, or what was that final push or sense of inspiration that said, you know what? I'm going to do this, or even to say no to this great opportunity. No, I don't want to be the CEO of another corporation, or I don't want to push the agenda, the creative agenda of someone else. I want to be able to do my own.
I think that, in 2019, I got married. And so that probably was the real factor, is that I had this foundation. I, fell in love and married the woman of my dreams who was like, and she would ask the question, what about your dreams? What about these wonderful things that you keep talking about? And when are you going to get to that? And having that support system was huge for me. And just, getting older and saying, if not now, then when am I going to start betting on myself? There's, people who are wildly successful and really creative, and people I think are geniuses that rely on me for my counsel. So why can't I rely on me for my counsel as well? And just take the leap. And having, my wife's blessing and her support was a really, really big factor in me being able to take the leap, to be quite honest.
Yeah, that's really important. And we hear entrepreneurs say that a lot in terms of partnerships are really important because entrepreneurial journeys can take you in a lot of directions. And so if you don't have the support at home, it can be actually really different. So it was obvious that 2019 was a magical year for you because you also worked on the project, the 40-year-old version around that time. And so how did that happen? Tell us a little bit about that.
Interestingly enough, it was an amazing moment for me because I'll take you back really quickly to 2015. Two filmmaker friends of mine, they had done a bunch of videos for me for Pharaoh Monch. And I was I did a bit of work on the film Miles Ahead with Don Cheadle. Pharaoh did the end credits with Robert Glasper and those cats on that song. And it was just a great experience hanging with Don, editing stuff and just being part of this whole process. I got bit by the film bug in a really big way. And I remember I was at the New York Film Festival and they did the screening. And at the end, it said, special thanks. And it had my name on the screen. And I was like, uh-oh, I need to do this now. So it kind of was, I got bit by it and encouraged by Don Cheadle as well. He was like, yeah, you can do this, and so my friend Sean Peters, who's a cinematographer, big time cinematographer, was going to the Black Star Film Festival in Philly. And he said, yo, you want to get in film? You should come down to the festival. So I got a bus ticket. My friend Sheena Lester was living down there. She said, you can stay with me, gave me her pass to go to the Black Star Film Festival. And while I was there, I met Rada Blank. And Rada was friends with Sean and all the crew. And we just all got together. Terrence Nance, who also directed a bunch of stuff for me. We were all there. And they became kind of my crew. They welcomed me in. And Rada did a one-woman play called Rodimus Prime at Joe's Pub. And I went to see it, and I was just blown away by it. And she said, at the time, I think she was working on it to be a web series or something. And I would love for you to help me with some music. And I'm like, whatever, Fast forward 2019, she says, yo, come have brunch with me. We were both living in Harlem. And we went and had some brunch. And she said, hey, I got the funding for this film. I would love for you to be the music supervisor.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. But I've never done that before. She says, well, I've never directed a film before. So let's figure this out together. And so I'm in the middle of planning my wedding. And I'm starting to get the scripts, and I'm starting to figure out how to do this thing. And work literally the day after I got married. We got married in Baltimore, drove back to New York, and the next morning we were leaving for the honeymoon. I was in the studio finishing up a piece for the film, which started shooting that day. I needed to have a piece in for that day. So yeah, and it was. Ooh, what an experience to work on a project that was indie like that, but with so much passion and really in my wheelhouse. And, it's hip hop and core hip hop. And it was like a very, very, and she was incredibly generous. Rada was incredibly generous with allowing me to come to set and be in the editing process and be in the sound mixing process, all things that normally music supervisors don't get a chance to do. She treated me like a producer. More than just a music supervisor. It wasn't just find me some music. It was like, help me place this. And she was very clear about what she wanted, but she trusted my counsel. And it was a wonderful experience. And that's really like, that was, and going to Sundance and for the first time in January of 2020. Yeah, 2020. Yeah, January 2020. 2 years of really experiencing that. And getting to see all these other films. And it was a wonderful, wonderful ride. And then she won Best Director at Sundance.
Right.
And, and people were very, very fond of the music. And I got a lot of calls over the next year based on what I did in that work. That I did.
Wow. So I knew that this was her directorial debut. I didn't know that this was your musical film debut as well. So that's very interesting that you all were able to do this walk together so successfully. Right. And so I love being introduced to Courtney Bryan. I think that's the beautiful thing about soundtracks, right? They always, if it's a great soundtrack, you're always being introduced to someone different. So she's an amazing, I had never heard of her before, an amazing talent, musician. What made you choose her?
I have to give all the credit to Rada on that. Rada and Courtney are friends. And when I got the script for the version, that stuff was in there already. Like the Quincy Jones Love and Peace was it was baked in the script. The Courtney Bryan stuff, at least the initial stuff. I remember Footsteps or Footprints. That song was already in the script. And then, we were like, if we're going to use this, let's see what else she has, because she's an indie artist. And so it suits well budgetarily as well, because usually majors will charge you a bunch. Indie artists also see how, because just the same way you discovered her, it becomes a good calling card for them. You pay them, but they see what there is to gain on their side. So we ended up using a bunch of her stuff because it just fit well. The stuff that I ended up really bringing was all of the stuff that Dee, the beat maker, was making, all the tracks that she was rhyming to. I suggested the Tribe Called Quest intro, opening, stuff like that. That's really what, The Stakes Is High, the Queen Latifah was her. That was her. But we collaborated incredibly on this, and like I said, it was like going to school for me. But also realizing that my skill set was transferable. Okay. Making albums and for years I was, I went from being an artist to being the manager to being an A&R person up at Columbia Records, and all of those. It's just about placing the right music with the right, collaboration, creating the right teams, and putting the right music in the right place. So the skills are transferable. So once I got over the overwhelmingness of being in the film on set and, Lena Waithe come in the set, once I got past
all of that,
it just gets down to, is it the right music? And I have great taste. I like to believe, and I have a good history, and our references are great, and so I just use that skill set to
and I'm glad you said that, because that was going to be my follow-up question. I had a conversation with a woman today who talked about the imposter syndrome, right? So although you get identified for a particular project, and you are probably the best person to do that, there's this thing inside of us that goes like, what if I'm not the right person? What if they find out that they made the wrong choice? And so even just to hear you say like, I have good taste, and my skills were transferable. And once I got past, I wanted you to talk a little bit more about, what it takes to really just trust yourself and your talent and do the job.
Lots of therapy.
That's okay. We all need that too.
The imposter. The thing, it's interesting because I had this conversation. I do a men's group. Right? My longtime therapist, I'm not in like current, but he's like, you would benefit from talking to other Black men.
Right.
And one of the things we were talking about is that, the imposter syndrome and the fear of stuff, it doesn't, we keep waiting to get over it, and you don't get over it. It just, the voice gets lower, and the courage gets, stronger. But there's always, it's just like a singer being afraid to go out on stage, like no matter how great they are, there's something about that moment, and you have to overcome it. And I am working on a huge project right now. And one of the biggest things about the imposter syndrome is these people are my friends, and you don't want to let your
friends down.
Right. And then the people that they're working with, and all the managers and big companies and, Netflix and them, they don't want to work with me. They don't know me. Right. They don't realize I'm the best person for this job. So this person's putting their reputation on the line, saying, no, I need my dude. And so then you just want to make sure that you deliver. And it's too much pressure to put on yourself. You just got to go do your job. You got to go do the thing that you love, that you've been doing. I've been doing this, since the early 90s. It's not, it's not new, Yeah. I know how to make records. I know how to clear samples. I know how to, and I'm really good at it, when I take away all of the rest of the.
Right.
So, I remember watching, I can't remember, one of the Hoosiers, one of these basketball movies, and he was like, just because you're playing in this big stadium, the hoop is still 10 feet high, and the court is still the same size. It's the same skill set, and it's just all this other noise around you. So you have to learn how to quiet the noise. Mm-hmm. And for me, what I'm working on is really, 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 I'm a pretty unorganized person. So I'm working on developing organizational skills.
Me too.
so that I won't panic about, so somebody calls me today and they're like, I need your sheet music for this. And so I'll know where that is.
Right.
And immediately go to, oh my God, I'm messing up. And I just say, no, the sheet music, yeah, no problem. I'll get that to you in 5 minutes. Or, Zoe, my assistant, please go, get that. It's in this file, like I know where.
Right.
So I'm working really diligently on the tools to overcome the anxiety.
Right.
And to not let it overwhelm me. And I can, on behalf of a client, I'm Superman, on behalf of myself, I'm trying to learn how to be that.
Yeah. It's important. So what would you say to creatives who are struggling with, kind of directing their talents so that they can make business, so that they can make the right corrections? And I think we all know people who are like immensely talented, but just don't know either how to direct their talent or can't seem to make the right connections to make these things happen. Like, what would be your advice to someone like that?
Yes. My advice would be, to be flexible. We want our success how we dreamed it.
Right.
We want it, like, I came into this business to be this, and sometimes there's a better usage of your talent than the dream that you had. So somebody wants to be, I want it to be like BBD, I wanted to be on stage and it wasn't the best usage of my talent. I was an artist. I did have a record, I had a successful record, but I wasn't happy there. And I said, wow, I really still want to be in this business, but I don't want to be a performer anymore. And you have to be willing to pivot. The pivot is the key. Very rarely are you going to find someone who's doing the same thing at 20 that they're doing at 50.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a rare thing. So you have to be able to pivot. And my success has been coming to see opportunities and see how my skill set is transferable and is this something that would bring me some level of joy? And then to create that and participate and create, and then, get in there. And if it doesn't make me happy, to figure out what's next, still within the context of what I believe my talent is. And and to be courageous enough to fail is, let's not even call it failure, just to try and maybe not succeed in this moment. But even the things that weren't successful for me were the things that led me to the things that were. So stay in there. Be open to all the possibilities. Do not become, because, when I was growing up, there was like, they would say, don't be a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Right.
In this era, it's like, you better be multi-hyphenate. You better be,
It's so true.
I agree more with that because, when you got linear, you missed a lot of opportunities that you were probably able to do. And so, to be able to say, yeah, I'm a music supervisor, but I'm also a filmmaker. I'm also a label owner and A&R, and I'm also, a writer. And and I do all of those things, and I have to, organize my life so that I can achieve them. And when I'm on a project, I have to, give it a sense of priority. But I consult people all the time, and I do all of these things because I'm open to the possibilities.
Right.
And it's at least to not only success and, financial well-being, but it leads to, joy.
Yeah.
Which is really the true success. At least I'm happy, I'm happy to be able to be able to participate in these things. So the advice is to be open, courageous. Don't worry about failing. Don't worry about being an imposter. Just go. Overcome that fear. Don't feel like because you feel like you're an imposter that you have to let it paralyze you. Just be courageous enough to overcome that and try some things,
All right. So throughout your career, you've been able to see music change a lot over the years. The music has changed. The way we listen to music has changed. What do you think is next? I wanted to ask you kind of two-part. Like, what have you learned from watching all of these different changes in music? And what do you think is next?
Great question. What I've learned is that, as my boy KP, Kawan Prater, always says, a jam is a jam. A jam in the 70s is a jam in the 2000s. It's like a jam is a jam. So whatever delivery system it comes under, Michael Jackson's Rock With You is going to be a jam. I don't care how you listen to it. You stream it, you put it on vinyl, you put it on an 8-track, it's a jam. So never forget the thing that we're making. The core thing is a great song is a great song, and great music is great music and appropriate. And that people's opinions about what great vary. And so you don't have to chase any trend, because there's a gap of people in the world that are going to love anything that somebody does. Really, your job is to find your audience. So that's what I've learned. So I'm steady in terms of what I bring to it, and what when somebody wants to hear something and I'm able to help, cultivate it, I know what I'm looking for. And it's always looking for a great song, melody, structure. I'm looking for something that has uniqueness as well as familiarity, and something, there's a song I worked on recently for the project I'm working on, and I'm walking around set and all day everybody's humming the melody.
Wow.
That's what you're looking for. You're looking for something that resonates immediately. Yeah. What's next? I don't know what's next. I know that I'm open to it. And that's the main thing.
That's the main thing.
I was never afraid of technology. When I remember when Napster was the thing and they were like, this is going to kill the music business. I'm like, no, we have to pivot. That's all. But the idea, I was with Steve Jobs, the idea of 1,000 songs in your pocket. I remember that was the ad campaign with the iPod. I'm like, this is great, because I was the guy, going on planes with a knapsack full of CDs,
Wow.
I was so glad not to have to do that. I can go back and I can listen to Roberta Flack. I don't have to carry the Roberta Flack. So I have it, with me, because I just on a whim decided I wanted to hear, I was enamored by that. And my guys were like, oh, this is going to ruin. I'm like, no, it's not. I said, it's going to take 5 years. They're going to figure out how to monetize it. And that's what will happen. And you're seeing that now with streaming. They're figuring it out. Yeah. Figure out, what is the purpose. I think even the sense that I had a meeting today with an artist who submitted an album for a distribution company I work with. And it was like a real deal, full album, And I see that coming back, even the new Kendrick Lamar. Like, people are making album concepts again because, at first it was like, this is a singles culture. It'll never go back to that. I'm never with the sky is falling crowd. I'm always like, we'll get to it. We just have to figure out how this technology fits into it and how it goes down. And then we'll get back to it. The biggest uptick in sales is with vinyl. People are back to vinyl and back to those moments, and A-side, B-side, making full concepts. So there's always going to be a place for that too. Okay. I'm not afraid of the future.
That's cool. So what's next for Guy Routte See?
Well, I'm currently the music supervisor on a Hulu series called Washington Black.
Oh, very cool.
Based on a novel, and I can't remember the author's name, I'm sorry. But my dear friend of mine, Selwyn Seyful Hines, is the showrunner, and he's the creator and the showrunner, and it stars Sterling K. Brown. And really wonderful story with fantasy elements about a young enslaved kid in Barbados in the 1800s who escapes and has this worldwide journey and goes to the Arctic and Nova Scotia and then to England and to Morocco and then finally back to Africa. All the while growing up, finding love, figuring things out. And it's a 9-part limited series, and it'll premiere next year. So that's what I'm in the middle of working on. That's my near future.
Wow, that's exciting.
I'm still making records. I still do a lot of consulting. I have a bunch of ideas about films. There's a couple of things that I want to direct. So I'm learning that and, studying on how to mostly documentary space. A lot of the desire these days is about hip hop culture, particularly in the 80s and 90s, which is my expertise. And so there's a bunch of stories that I want to tell from that era in different formats, whether it's a, documentary format or a book format. I'm thinking of writing a book as well on that. So, just like I said, open to whatever the opportunities are, embracing kind of my elder statesman energy in the business. A lot of the kids call me OG, so I embrace the OG, even though I feel like I'm a kid. And just really, really to enjoy this portion of my career, But I'm ever growing, ever learning, and being open to the possibilities. That's the biggest thing I learned, is to always be open to the possibilities and never say never. You never know where the next thing is and the next opportunity is going to come from. And if your heart sings when it's offered to you, it's the right way to go. You got to pay attention to your feelings.
I love it. I love it. Well, we are excited for you. It sounds like the road is opening up for a whole lot of new things to happen for you. And so we would love to have you come back and talk about some of these new projects. We're going to be looking out for Washington Black. Tell folks how they can follow you or read about you or connect with you more.
On all social media platforms, I'm just Guy Routte See, my first and last name, on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is where I probably spend most of my time. And you can find me there, and anything that's connected to me will be there. And my schematics Instagram, which I just put up and I have to start populating, is at schematics with no vowels. SCMATCS.
Okay.
So, they can follow Guy Routte See, and I'll lead you everywhere I am.
Okay. All righty. Well, we're going to do that. We wish you much success, and we look forward to hearing from you again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And thank you all for listening. Next week, we'll be back with another great guest. You take care.
The Business First podcast is hosted and produced by Sonia Aline. Associate producer, Ariel Mancibo. Executive producer, Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. And on social at business_first_podcast on IG. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Line Media production.